Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. A few days ago, I released a poll on my YouTube community tab, and it asked a very simple question. Which of the following is currently the largest problem facing War Thunder? In it, I gave 4 definitive answers, and the 5th answer was an other, where you can write your answer below. And so, 11,000 people thus far have answered this as of the writing of this video, and the number one issue, the thing that people said was the largest problem facing War Thunder, is BR issues and compression, with 66% of people responding in that way. That's 7,000 people, give or take, to have answered that BR issues and compression are the largest issue. Now, bear in mind that every other answer on here, just because you answer that, doesn't mean that the other things are not issues or concerns by people who said that BR issues and compression are the biggest problems, but it does mean that they, of course, consider that to be the biggest problem with War Thunder right now. And among the other answers, of course, we have server instability and lag at 9%, War Thunder's monetization at 20%, cheaters only got 2% of the vote, which I'm actually kind of surprised about, and other, where I said that you could write your answer below, got 4% of the vote. Now, when it comes to BR issues and compression, I'm largely inclined to agree. Ultimately, when it comes down to it is, especially in aircraft, we now have vehicles that have all-aspect missiles at 10.0 BR, right? Mostly premium vehicles have all-aspect missiles at 10.0 BR. One could make a very convincing argument that this is pay to win. But regardless, not even getting into the ethical dilemma of pay to win and if this should be something in War Thunder, you have to ask yourself, what is an F-86 Sabre that has no countermeasures, has machine guns, and has nothing really in the way of missiles? Sometimes they might have AIM-9Bs. What is one of those doing facing all-aspect missiles from aircraft that are 10.0 BR, give or take, right? Like the A6E Tram, A10A Early, the Su-25K. You can get into matches with those aircraft and have absolutely nothing to stop them. And a lot of that is linked to BR compression, right? And so you also have other aircraft that at the very top of the heap, F-16s, and don't worry, I'm going to go over tanks in just a moment, but things like F-16s, MiG-29s, things like that, even F-14s, you have these things where they're at the top of the heap and they are substantially more capable, like several BRs more capable than anything that's even at 11.0 BR, right? Like the MiG-21 Lazur M, for example, or the MiG-21 BIS, or any like 11.0 BR aircraft, give or take. Like if you were to fly an F-16 next to a MiG-21 BIS, for example, you're going to think, wow, this F-16, based on how the division of BRs is amongst every other vehicle in War Thunder currently, the F-16 must be, what, 2 BRs higher? Nope, it's actually just 1 BR higher. And so we have this problem in War Thunder where Gaijin, it makes sense from a business perspective, where they are just so happy to add these cutting-edge vehicles to the game every few patches, where it's like the F-16, MiG-29, F-14, even the A-10 when that was first released. I mean, that was like the first premium, if I'm not mistaken, that had access to all-aspect missiles. But just focusing on the F-16s, MiG-29s, things like that. And those vehicles are so much more powerful than almost anything that came before them, where to a point they dominate. The MiG-29 is a little bit better when it comes to longer range, especially with their R-27ERs, T's, and R's, but you also have it where the F-16's phenomenal in close range. Now, of course, Gaijin kind of nerfed missiles a little bit, and they just jump on any flares that they see, but regardless, I mean, you can still fire all-aspect missiles 6 times with an F-16 and get phenomenal maneuverability, excellent acceleration, and just overall great performance that just totally eclipses anything that the MiG-21 BIS, again, for example, can put out. The MiG-21 BIS, I'm just using this as an example here, it has nothing that can compete with it, where it's like the only time where you're going to get a kill versus an F-16 or a MiG-29 or anything like that is if the enemy pilot either ran out of countermeasures, if they're already damaged, or they're simply not paying attention. That's it. You're really not going to be able to do too much against those aircraft, where if you have pilots of similar or equal skill, of course the F-16 is going to win every time. The MiG-29 is going to win every time. In a way where if you put those in like tanks, you could almost look at it like a Leopard 2A6 versus a Leopard A1A1L44 or something of that nature, where it's like, of course the A1A1L44 can defeat the 2A6, but the 2A6 has got to be doing something wrong in order to lose that fight. But basically what I'm saying is that top tier, like the very top of the heap, especially when it comes to aircraft, we have these vehicles that are so incredibly powerful compared to the vehicles that are just 1 BR below them, or even 0.7 BR below them, where it's just ridiculous that they're even in game at the BRs that they are, right? Like they shouldn't have just gone up 0.3 or 0.7 BR from where they were before. Maybe just rip that band-aid off, Gaijin, and put them up to 13.0 BR, or like 12.7, or a very minimum 11 or 12.3 BR, I mean to say. You know, it just makes no sense right now where it is, where you have these ridiculously powerful vehicles, like, again, F-16s and MiG-29s. And again, they are defeatable. I mean, you could even use a biplane, I guess, in theory, to defeat them, but you have these ridiculously powerful vehicles that are in no way just 1 BR better. Like, of course, they are 1 BR higher than, again, just using kind of the common example here, the MiG-21 BIS, but they are substantially better than 1 BR better than that vehicle. And because of that, especially, again, I think it's most pronounced in aircraft because we've already almost reached the top of the heap when it comes to tanks. We are still a long way off from doing that with aircraft. I mean, we're only in like more or less 70s aircraft right now, whereas tanks, things like the T-72 M2 Moderna Leopard 2 PL, those are pretty much brand new tanks, right? Like those just entered service in about the last half decade. They entered service more recently than Gaijin introduced tanks into War Thunder. We are pretty much at the top of the heap technologically when it comes to tanks. Of course, there are still some better tanks out there like the Leopard 2A7, the M1A2 SEP V3, I believe it is, or whatever it is, right? Or the M1A3, I forget. Anyways, there are still a few variants that we could still add into War Thunder that are new, but we're pretty much already there when it comes to tanks. But when it comes to aircraft, Gaijin did a really good job of hyping up these aircraft like F-16s and really almost anything at top tier. But once you look at the tech tree, you look at tier 7 and tier 8, notice how thin they are compared to tier 6, 5, 4, any other tier pretty much. They are incredibly thin, and the reason being is because Gaijin has decided to hype up these top tier vehicles and provide nothing of substance other than just a few of those top tier vehicles. Like the F-16 came into War Thunder with like, what, 2 or 3 nations initially? MiG-29 now is with 2 nations, and you have a few other vehicles here and there, but it's pretty much just those 2 vehicles. And if Gaijin decided, hey, let's go add a bunch of competitor vehicles or similar vehicles to this all at the same time in one patch, this wouldn't be as big of an issue, and they could actually decompress BRs much more than they can now. But if they were to just decompress BRs, maybe even another 0.3, right? Like bring it up to 12.3 BR. What are they going to do? They're just going to be F-16s and MiG-29s fighting each other? I'm sure that might piss off quite a few people. Now, I'm sure it's probably going to be actually better for the game if that happens, if it's just 70s fighters onwards, essentially, versus, each other, whereas sub-70s fighters, they're kind of fighting each other in their own BRs, but ultimately, we have a huge amount of BR decompression that still needs to occur, and I'm glad that Gaijin recently decompressed both aircraft and tanks. Trust me, I am glad about that, because hopefully it should take away some of those really wonky matchups from 9.0 BR or like even 11.0 BR if you're flying aircraft. Hopefully it should take away some of that, but right now it's still too compressed. There are people out there, I remember when the F-16 first came into War Thunder, who were saying, we have to introduce this as a 13.0 BR vehicle, and they were hoping for this thing where Gaijin would just introduce it as 13.0 BR and just kind of expand the BRs, kind of like an accordion. Obviously that didn't happen, and it's seen, I think since release, 2 BR increases. Didn't it start off at 11.3, then went to 11.7, now it's at 12.0? If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong there, but pretty much we've seen a 0.7 BR increase in aircraft pretty damn recently since the F-16 came into the fray, and same with MiG-21s. But going to tanks now, you can make more or less about the same argument for tanks as well. I mean, you have some tanks out there, there's no way that, again, a Leopard 2A6 should really be in a match with some of these 10.0 BR vehicles. Or a better example might be something like a T-55A having to fight like a 9.0 BR premium, maybe like a Khalid, or even the other example I used previously, a Leopard A1A1L44 that has a superior gun, superior maneuverability, it's got thermals, pretty much everything to take out the T-55 in no time. But the thing is, it's never going to be completely fixed. Of course, you're going to have imbalances. I mean, you look at mid-BRs where you have some vehicles, or more so in low BRs, tanks, for for example, where no matter what angle you shoot or wherever you hit on the enemy tank, they are not going to be penned by you because they are just a sufficiently higher BR where they have heavier armor, and once they get a whiff of where you are, they can just shoot you and completely kill you in one hit. It's going to be like that regardless, however much decompression happens in War Thunder, you're always going to have these mismatches where your tank can literally not do anything, which is part of the reason, coincidentally, why I like aircraft more, because for the most part, especially if it's just gunfighting in aircraft, you can beat the enemy aircraft, right? Like, they don't have enough armor to stop your MGs. Like, if you can get a hit on them, you can get a hit on them. Whereas in tanks, you might not be able to kill them even if you get the first few hits on them. So that's just my own thing, regardless. Going back to the actual argument at hand, the actual discussion at hand, and I'll try to end it in just a few seconds here. But when it comes to decompression, we have a serious problem, especially when it comes to aircraft, when you have things like A7s that are facing substantially better vehicles than it in air combat that are lower BR. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. Or similarly powerful vehicles in air RB. It makes no sense. When it comes to tanks, why are we seeing some vehicles like the WMA 301, which recently saw a BR increase, thankfully? Why is it still 8.7 BR? It should probably be a higher BR. It's got Gen 2 thermals, tandem charged ATGM. It's got a pretty capable, though not the best, APF SDS. That should probably be 9.0 BR for all, for what it is. You have so many of these vehicles out there that I think the reason why Gaijin is keeping a lot of them at the BRs in which they are is simply because if they move them up too much, it could mess with the entire BR structure. I think that's kind of what Gaijin fears. So I think Gaijin just rip that band-aid off. Increase max BRs by another 0.3 at very minimum, probably 0.7 or even a whole BR. Just do it. Rip the band-aid off. It's not going to increase match times by too much, and that is actually one of the concerns that Gaijin has pointed out that they have, if I haven't already mentioned it, that they fear that match times will increase, or match queue times will increase substantially if they increase BR, the max BR, and compress all the BRs because of it. They fear that there won't be enough players to fill matches instantly, but I can almost guarantee you that people would much rather wait, and actually I think people have done polls on this on their own YouTubes, where people would rather wait the extra however many seconds to get into a match if they feel that their match is much more fair. Who wouldn't? You know what? I'm going to go post that right now, and you'll see the results of this probably tomorrow when I release this video. But I'm going to just ask everybody, would you rather wait a little bit more time in order to get into a match, let's say 30 seconds to a minute, in order to get into a match if it's more fair, if you know that you're not going to be in your gunfighter like a Saber, and you're going to have to fight an A6E Tram, you're going to have to fight an SU-25K. Or if you're in a tank, if you are in something that has poor turret traverse, poor power to weight, and now you have to fight something like a Term 3. I'm going to ask that. But regardless, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I think Gaijin should still be increasing BR. I'm glad that they increased it recently, but that is just a very minor step. It's kind of a band-aid fix, because they're just going to keep increasing these power, like they're going to keep adding these incredibly powerful aircraft, and then BRs are going to have to increase more. F-16s function more like a 13.0 or 12.7 BR vehicle, or MiG-29s, than they do a 12.0 BR vehicle. And having them face an actual 11.0 BR vehicle, like a MiG-21 or any of the other ones, is a travesty. Either way, thanks so much. Let me know again in the comments below what you guys think about this. But either way, I will see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.